Before we begin, please be advised that this episode contains graphic descriptions of violence as presented during the trial. Please take care while listening. It's Tuesday morning, January 14th, 2025, day 2 of the trial. The morning unfolds just as it did yesterday. In fact, the daily structure is quickly settling into a predictable rhythm. Early mornings, strict schedules, and constant supervision. For all of us, the predictability of the process was both grounding and, at times, a little suffocating. I had a chance to catch up with a couple of the jurors after the trial, and I'm eager to share some of their thoughts with you throughout the podcast. Here's juror number 1 sharing his breakdown of our morning routine.
Every day we would wake up at around 6 a.m. The sheriffs would come knock on our door because they had to take the alarm clocks out of our rooms since they have radios, which could have exposed us to details of the case. We'd have 30 minutes before we went down to the hotel lobby to have breakfast. All the TVs in the lobby had to be turned to the Weather Channel so that, we wouldn't see any news coverage of the case. I'd never really eat much, but I enjoyed having coffee with everybody in the morning. After breakfast, they would give us an hour of time to get ready for the day, and then we'd be shuttled to the courthouse. When we got to the courthouse, we would go to our place that was basically home base, was a conference room where deliberation happened. We would chill out there for like 30 minutes. Sometimes, I think one day it was actually like almost 3 hours before they brought us into the courtroom.
As juror number 1 explains, once we're at the courthouse, we settle into our jury room where we spend time getting to know each other. Remember, we're not allowed to discuss the case until deliberations, which honestly is harder than it sounds. And with no cell phones or laptops to retreat into, we have nothing to do but talk. So, what do a group of random strangers, tasked with deciding a man's fate but unable to talk about it, actually talk about? Well, we get to know each other the old-fashioned way. We share about our jobs, families, where we grew up, and swap favorite restaurant names. Among us were people with professions like doctor and social worker, clinician and accountant, engineer and architect, homemaker and tour manager. We all came from different backgrounds, worlds that probably would never intersect in our daily lives. I've said this before, but it felt like an unexpected social experiment. The bailiff and officers joked with us back in Nashville, saying that we'd be bonded by the end of this, and they weren't wrong. What the 16 of us experienced over these 10 days created a connection that will stay with us forever. It's not unlike how investigators had to piece together all the fragments of evidence, each piece seemingly unrelated at first, but forming a complete picture over time. Just as we were strangers brought together by circumstance, so were the detectives, attorneys, and even Jasmine's family, all linked by the pursuit of justice. Unlike us, though, they didn't have the option to walk away when the trial was over. Their bond, forged through grief and relentless determination, will last far beyond the verdict and sentencing. Sequestration wasn't just about being physically removed from the outside world. It carried an emotional and mental weight that we all had to process in our own way. Juror number 5 kept a journal throughout the trial, documenting her thoughts and experiences in real time. Here's a passage she wrote about the weight of sequestration.
Maybe it's important to be confined without the people you love, the things that make you comfortable, the regular distractions before sentencing a person to life in prison. Of course, a stay in a hotel with supervised dining and outings to landmarks is different. It's different than the cold hostility of a maximum security prison privately run with shareholders' best interest in mind, but still, the taste of sequestration gives insight to the gravity of it all.
This is Sequestered, a juror's perspective on the murder trial for Jasmine Pace. I'm Sarah, juror number 11. Each episode, I'll take you inside the courtroom, behind the scenes, and into the weighty moments of this trial as we honor Jasmine's life and navigate the complexities of seeking justice. Let's begin. This is episode 3, Connecting the Dots. Okay, here's what we know so far. Jasmine Pace was last seen alive on November 22nd, 2022, when she arrived at Jason Chen's apartment at 110 Tremont Street in Chattanooga. At 2:18 a.m. on November 23rd, Jasmine sent her mother, Katrina Bean, a location pin for the same address, a message that would go unseen for 3 days. By November 26th, after days of silence, Katrina took action. At a Verizon store, she accessed Jasmine's My Chevy app, tracking her car to 900 Mountain Creek Road. Jasmine's father and sister met her there, but Jasmine was nowhere to be found. The family knocked on doors, questioned residents, and called the police. With an officer present, Katrina dialed one of the last numbers on Jasmine's call log, Jason Chen. Jason claimed he hadn't seen Jasmine in a while and gave Katrina a fake address, 500 Tremont Street, an abandoned house. Suspicious, the family followed Jasmine's location pin to 110 Tremont Street, her last known location. A neighbor confirmed hearing a woman scream from apartment 210 on November 22nd. Breaking into the unit, the family found Jasmine's driver's license, credit cards, and travel bag, and immediately called 911. Police arrived, briefly looked around, and left, finding nothing suspicious. But Katrina wasn't done. She returned to apartment 210, collecting Jasmine's belongings and a box of items she believed could be crucial. The next day, on November 27th, Investigator Zack Crawford took over the case. His work would soon connect the evidence that led to Jason Chen's arrest. Fast forward to January 14th, 2025. Day 2 of the trial. A day that reveals the full story of Jasmine Pace's murder and the prosecution's case against Jason Chen. Soon, every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every detail will come together, exposing the truth in a way that can no longer be ignored. Get ready. This was a long day for all trial goers. The 16 of us file into the courtroom just as we did the day before. The routine was already settling in. The knock at the door, line up, be counted, walk across the hall, enter the courtroom, and silently file into the jury box. I adjusted my squeaky blue chair and flipped my notebook to a fresh page, then glanced toward the bench where Judge Patterson remained standing. He invited the room to be seated. With everyone in place, he adjusted his glasses, looked toward the attorneys, and signaled for General Womp to take the floor. Lead investigator Zack Crawford is already sitting in the witness stand. Crawford carried a composed and methodical presence in the courtroom. His dark, short hair was neatly styled, and a mustache and beard framed his face, adding to his serious, no-nonsense demeanor. Deep lines etched across his forehead hinted at the weight of his profession. Years spent analyzing crime scenes, piecing together the truth, and delivering facts with precision. When responding to questions, he spoke with measured confidence, his steady voice reinforcing the gravity of the evidence he had meticulously gathered. His sharp eyes rarely stray, as if he is mentally retracing every step of the investigation in real time. He answered with deliberate precision, never rushing, ensuring the jury grasped the significance of each detail.
Images here were just shown to the jury just minutes ago. This shows some of the evidence found in Chen's apartment, the reaction of a forensics agent called Blue Star. You can see the blue colored on the floor there. Investigator Zack Crawford with Chattanooga Police testified about the use of this agent. He testified in his experience the discoloration on Chen's floor means the presence of blood. He said he had never seen that amount of blood illuminated by Blue Star in his homicide career.
You might recall we ended day one of the trial with the search of Jason Chen's apartment at 110 Tremont Street. The search warrant was granted for apartment 210 at 11:45 p.m. on November 28th. Jason Chen was not home when officers arrived. Upon entry, officers cleared and secured the apartment before the crime scene unit began processing and documenting the scene. Investigators conducted a walkthrough, searching for evidence and any clues about what had transpired. Investigator Crawford told the jury that the search began with gloves and a flashlight. Then, what started as a routine search quickly escalated into a homicide investigation with the first spray of Blue Star, a forensic agent. Crawford, who had already noticed the stains during his initial walkthrough, watched as Blue Star illuminated a disturbingly large area in the living room. As the crime scene unit moved through the apartment, more evidence surfaced. Blue Star revealed blood smeared in the living room, splattered and pooled in the bathroom, and soaked deep into the bedroom carpet. There was, as DA Cody Wamp had stated in her opening argument, blood all over the apartment. What had first appeared to be a clean apartment was now telling a much darker story. Crime scene investigators photographed every stain, swabbed surfaces, and meticulously collected evidence, each piece bringing them closer to uncovering what had truly happened inside apartment 210. With suspicions mounting, investigators expand their search beyond apartment 210, canvassing neighbors and scouring the area for overlooked evidence. One conversation led Investigator Crawford to a manhole cover in the back parking lot. Determined to leave no stone unturned, he crawled 70 feet underground in search of clues. Nothing was discovered, but the manhole cover sat near a dumpster outside of Jason Chen's apartment, where a crucial discovery did await. Inside the wooden fencing and on the ground just in front of two blue dumpsters, investigators find a pair of blue jeans with discoloration resembling blood, a pair of white low-top Vans shoes, size 11, and a blood-soaked sanitary pad lying next to a pair of women's underwear. These items were photographed and collected for evidence. DA Cody Wamp then highlighted a significant detail. Jasmine Pace was on her menstrual cycle at the time of her disappearance, and the pad found near the dumpster matched the one she was wearing when her body was recovered. The photos of these items in front of the dumpster are available to view on our website. Adding to the complexity of the case, Investigator Crawford highlighted a key forensic limitation. In major criminal investigations, law enforcement can submit only 10 pieces of evidence at a time for forensic testing. Compounding the challenge, most forensic labs face month-long backlogs. In this case, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or TBI, conducted forensic analysis through its crime lab, performing DNA testing, toxicology, and fingerprint analysis to support law enforcement. Given the urgency, Crawford prioritized the most critical evidence, items most likely to connect Jason Chen to the crime. Although investigators collected the items from the dumpster, they were not included in the 10 items submitted to TBI for testing. District Attorney Cody Wamp presented these details strategically, anticipating the defense's argument. If the dumpster evidence wasn't tested, they could claim it couldn't be definitively linked to the murder. Despite this, forensic testing yielded a critical breakthrough. The blood found inside Jason Chen's apartment was a DNA match to Jasmine Pace. What began as a missing person case had now shifted dramatically, and Jason Chen was the main suspect. You know, during sequestration, I had a lot of time to think. And honestly, I kept wishing I had a speaker so that I could just listen to a great book. That's why I love audiobooks. Whether I'm driving, walking the dogs, or traveling, I can just press play and get lost in an amazing story anytime and anywhere. One of my all-time favorites is New York by Edward Rutherford. This epic historical novel spans over 400 years, following generations of families through the city's most pivotal moments, from its Dutch settlement days and all the way to 9/11. It was one of the first audiobooks I had ever listened to. It felt like the narrator was reading the story just for me. I was completely hooked. Here's some good news. You can listen to New York or any other book for free. Audible is giving sequestered listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial. Just go to audibletrial.com/sequestered. That's one free book, yours to keep forever. So find something you love and get listening. Go to audibletrial.com/sequestered. At this point in the case, Jason Chen is officially identified as a suspect. Despite multiple attempts to contact him, Jason remains elusive. Investigators gather information about his family, personal life, and his movements. They confirm Chen's identity not only from his residence at 110 Tremont Street, but also by his cell phone number, his enrollment at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and finally by learning that he drove a 2018 gray Toyota Camry. Next, Crawford would obtain a search warrant for Chen's cell phone data, revealing ping locations with coordinates that led to 1943 Ashburn Court in Nolensville, Tennessee. I need to pause here because, hold on. Did they just say Nolensville? I live about 4 miles from Nolensville, Tennessee. This case just got a whole lot closer to home. Literally. In the early hours of November 29th at 2 a.m., a search warrant was executed at Chen's parents' house in Nolensville, Tennessee. 4 homicide detectives and crime scene investigators from the Chattanooga Police Department responded, along with officers from the Nolensville Police Department. Upon arrival, the first contact made was with Jason's parents. Investigator Crawford informed them of the search warrant and asked if Jason Chen was inside. Jason's father called for him, and moments later, Jason appeared from a room on the second floor. Crawford testified that when Jason came to the door, his demeanor was defensive yet calm. Crawford informed Jason that law enforcement had a search warrant for his parents' residence and that he would be detained at the Nolensville Police Department, where a separate search warrant had been issued for his person, more specifically for his DNA. Upon hearing this, Jason's first response was to ask if they had spoken with his lawyer yet. Crawford told him no. He didn't argue or resist. Instead, he complied with the officers, allowing them to escort him to the patrol car waiting outside. Next, District Attorney Cody Womp questioned Investigator Crawford about photographs of Jason Chen standing in his parents' doorway, drawing attention to a notable item on his head, a red and white trucker hat. The hat featured the phrase, "Anything goes," a detail investigators carefully documented as part of the case. During the search of Chen's parents' house, investigators made a curious discovery in the room where Jason Chen had been staying. His iPhone was found inside of a red jewelry box, which had been turned around and obscurely placed on the top shelf of a cabinet. His phone would become a goldmine of information for investigators. On the desk in this same room, Jason's wallet was located with his ID and credit cards inside. One of the cards would later be linked to receipts from Walgreens and Walmart, where Chen was seen on security footage just days before purchasing Band-Aids and cleaning supplies. A laptop and multiple handwritten notes were also located on the desk in this room. These notes provided an interesting read. One bright yellow Post-it note said,
"Approach them."
Another had the name
Crawford
written on it, with Investigator Crawford's cell phone number written next to it, some doodles, and then two other names.
Brooke
And
Cheyenne.
who were these girls? Another fluorescent Post-it note had two sets of 11-digit numbers written on it. There was also a white note card with a thin black border, listing finger sizes for rings in different handwriting. It wasn't brought up in trial testimony, so it may not be relevant to the case, but it still caught my attention. There's another dark purple Post-it note that caught my eye. It's difficult to make out in the photos, but Investigator Crawford read it aloud, revealing what it had said.
If law enforcement contacts other family members, what do they do?
Other yellow Post-it notes read,
Saturday, November 19th. Last time I saw her, she would call me once a day. Scratch that. She would call me every day. Last time was on November 22nd on the phone.
Then investigators found a notebook containing organized notes about Jasmine. Here's what the spiral notebook read.
Friday, November 18th. Last time I saw her. Tuesday, November 22nd. Last time we talked. She has a huge history of running away from home in her teenage years. Mom was an alcoholic, ran away to Canada for several years and was homeless. Has restraining order against X. Scratch that out. Her dad left when she was a kid. Has restraining order against X. Says she was recently online on Facebook. Next to kin.
You can see all of these notes on our website, sequesteredpod.com. We have a lot of thoughts about them, especially since they weren't really brought up again in the trial. But I can see why the prosecution wanted them included in this testimony. Also, it seemed like with Chen writing down Investigator Crawford's number, he had clearly listened to his voicemail. And from the way the notes were worded, it felt like he was trying to get his story straight before calling Crawford back. In another room of the parents' house, investigators located Jason Chen's backpack. Among the items found inside, an eyeglasses case was collected. Inside of the case was Jasmine Pace's SIM card. This obviously raised some serious questions. Why did he have it? Had he removed it to prevent tracking? Where was her cell phone? This discovery would become a critical piece of the investigation, suggesting a deliberate effort to conceal evidence. Finally, Investigator Crawford revealed that Jason's car was found parked inside of his parents' garage, while both of his parents' vehicles sat outside in the driveway. In photos shown during the trial, the two-car garage, each side with its own retracting door, appeared to serve as a storage space for the family. The side closest to the house was packed with items, leaving no clear pathway. On the other side, a gray Toyota Camry was wedged tightly among the stored items, as if space had been cleared just enough to fit the vehicle. The placement of Chen's car, tucked away while the family's vehicles remained outside, raised an unsettling question. Had he been deliberately hiding his car from view? Jason was placed under an investigative hold at Nolensville PD while investigators searched his parents' home. Once the search had concluded, he was formally arrested for criminal homicide and transported back to Chattanooga, where he was booked and fingerprinted. His Toyota Camry was transported shortly behind. The very next day, on December 1st, 2022, investigators made a grim discovery: a suitcase wedged into the brush off of Suck Creek Road. Inside, the body of Jasmine Pace. DA Wamp turned to Investigator Crawford, asking him to connect the dots between Chen's arrest and the chilling discovery that followed just 24 hours later.
Mr. Chen was only placed under an NCIC hold, investigative hold at that point. When we came back, I applied for an arrest warrant through the Hamilton County Magistrate's Office, at which point he signed off order for at the time for criminal homicide.
And at this point in time, did anybody know where Jasmine was?
No.
Were investigators and other law enforcement officers of the Chattanooga Police Department actively looking for Ms. Pace?
We didn't stop until we looked.
What day was that arrest warrant issued?
The arrest warrant, it was issued on November 30th, 2020.
And do you recall what day it was that Jasmine's body was located on the side of the Tennessee River off of Sutt Creek Road?
On December 1st.
I'm not going to go into too much detail, but were you notified when Jasmine's body was located?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you report to that area where the suitcase had been found?
Yes, that's correct.
And then subsequently, did the medical examiner also arrive at that scene off Sutt Creek Road?
Yes, that's correct.
And was it after that that you also went to the medical examiner's office for the autopsy?
That's correct.
Next, DA Wamp focused on Chen's phone records, revealing call logs between Jasmine Pace and Jason Chen, along with text messages Chen sent to her phone after she was last seen. Investigators forensically accessed his phone data, uncovering multiple deleted text messages to Jasmine and a 71-minute phone call that took place at 11:56 a.m. on November 22nd. Crawford explained to the jury the key difference between data extracted from a physical phone versus call records from cell phone service providers. Data extracted from a phone will reveal deleted texts, photos, app data, and metadata, which can expose altered timestamps or hidden messages. In contrast, cell service records log calls, texts, and tower pings, but it doesn't store message content, making them a permanent, unchangeable record that a user cannot delete or manipulate. DA Wamp then shows screenshots of text messages on Chen's phone that didn't appear in his text records, suggesting that they had been deleted. Among them was a message sent from Jason's phone to Jasmine's phone at 7:53 p.m. on November 28th. It read,
Good morning. Slept like a baby? I made myself a matcha.
Attached to the text was a photo of Jason holding a Starbucks matcha drink. But the metadata had revealed that this photo was actually taken on July 23rd of 2021, and it had been altered on November 23rd of 2022 before it was sent to Jasmine's phone, hours after Jasmine was last seen. CPD investigators determined that Chen manipulated the timestamp, making it appear as though Jasmine was alive and responding after her disappearance. Later that day, he reinforced this illusion by sending another text to her phone, attempting to create a false trail.
Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?
Based on the location of that photo and those text messages, who were those sent from?
Based on how they were captured from the device, it appears they were sent from Jason Chen's cellular device to that of Jasmine Pace's cellular device.
Because that's Jasmine's phone number at the top.
Correct. That's Jasmine's phone number associated at the top. It just doesn't have her contact name.
Next, the prosecution introduced a critical update from Jason Chen's former apartment complex. During renovations of Chen's apartment, the complex manager contacted Chattanooga PD, reporting the possible discovery of new evidence. Investigator Crawford and crime scene investigators returned to Chen's former apartment, where ongoing renovations revealed new evidence that had previously gone unnoticed. With the bed and furniture now removed, a dark discoloration in the carpet became visible in the exact spot where Chen's bed had been during their initial search, suggesting a stain that had seeped deep into the flooring. Additionally, Crawford observed an oil stain on the wall, positioned at a height consistent with where someone might have sat up in bed and rested their head, further confirming the original placement of the bed in his room and thus reinforcing the significance of this newly uncovered evidence. Once the carpet was pulled back, a large dark stain was revealed, seeping through to the carpet insulation and onto the floorboard. With his experience in homicide cases, Investigator Crawford stated that it unmistakably looked like blood. The entire section of blood-soaked carpet, along with the insulation beneath it, was collected as evidence. On day 3 of the trial, this very piece, the stained carpet, the blue insulation, and the unmistakable presence of Jasmine's dried blood would be laid out on a tarp in front of the jury box, remaining there for the entire day. It was an inescapable, haunting reminder of the crime we were there to judge.
What do we have here?
This is going to be the carpet section from the bedroom. This is going to be the bathroom area leading into the bedroom. This will be the left-hand side. In earlier photographs of the original execution of the search warrant, the bed would actually have been located in this area right here.
So is this evidence that you did not find when you were in the apartment on the 28th of November?
That's correct.
Because the bed was there.
There was a bed placed over top. The other things that are different at this time, at the time that the search warrant was executed, it appeared that the lights that were placed in there were aftermarket of some sort. They had a light of hue to them. It was not a very well lit apartment. So a lot of things we did by way of flashlight at the time. Once they reclaimed the apartment, they put new lights in there for the assistance of renovation. So it was a lot brighter. I could actually observe a lot more things at this point in time than having to use just a flashlight and then lighting the apartment.
DA Cody Womp asked Investigator Crawford to explain the Arctic Camera System. RTIC, or Real-Time Intelligence Center, monitors over 3,000 surveillance cameras across Chattanooga. We've all seen them. They're those cameras on telephone poles at major intersections, you know, with the flashing blue lights. One of these cameras, positioned at the corner of Tremont and Fraser, captured many key moments in the investigation. Arctic footage confirmed Jasmine Pace's arrival at Jason Chen's apartment at 11:42 p.m. on November 22, 2022, matching data from her My Chevy app. Additional surveillance showed Chen inside a Walmart on November 23rd, purchasing washcloths and cleaning supplies, which investigators later found inside of his apartment. After checkout at Walmart, he remained in the parking lot for 30 minutes, raising questions about his behavior. Later that day, Chen was seen at Walgreens at 1:39 p.m. and again at 7:03 p.m., with a 5.5-hour gap between visits. At 8:30 p.m., Jasmine's vehicle was seen exiting the lofts at Tremont, driven by Chen, who was wearing a gray hoodie and the red and white Anything Goes trucker hat. The vehicle is shown again at 8:41 p.m., arriving at the Signal View condos, the location where her family later found it. 12 minutes later, Arctic footage shows a dark-colored Toyota Prius dropping off a person wearing a red and white hat and a gray hoodie at 110 Tremont Street, which Crawford believes was a Lyft ride, further piecing together Chen's movements that night. In the courtroom, DA Womp cues the Arctic cams up to the evening of November 23rd. At 5:58 p.m., Jason Chen exits the front entrance of his apartment building, pulling a large suitcase down the sidewalk. He appears to struggle lifting it up the stairs. Then his right arm drops as the weight of the suitcase settles back on its wheels. He then turns left and rolls the suitcase out of frame and into the parking lot. Moments later, his gray Toyota Camry is seen leaving the parking lot and turning west onto Fraser Avenue.
Was he traveling in the correct direction to get to Suck Creek Road?
Yes, he was traveling in the direction of Suck Creek Road.
Surveillance evidence continued to tighten the prosecution's case. Arctic footage had already shown Jason Chen leaving his apartment with a suitcase on November 23rd, the same day he purchased cleaning supplies at Walmart and Walgreens. Now, additional Ring camera footage from his downstairs neighbor, Doug Lynch, captured Chen entering and exiting the apartment building multiple times. This footage, combined with the timeline of his movements, was painting a clearer picture of what happened in the hours after Jasmine disappeared. But the most critical piece of evidence was still to come. At 4:42 p.m., Detective Stephen Bulkley took the stand. A key investigator in the case, Bulkley described the search for Jasmine Pace as an all-hands-on-deck investigation. His testimony focused on the phone records that ultimately led to the discovery of her body. On November 28, 2022, Bulkley wrote search warrants for Jason's T-Mobile records. On December 1, 2022, those records put Jason Chen on Suck Creek Road. Using the location data from Chen's phone, detectives zeroed in on Suck Creek Road, starting their search at the very first vehicle pull-off, a small gravel turnout near the steep embankment. In under a minute, Bulkley's eyes locked onto something partially hidden in the brush. A suitcase, wedged in a swath of kudzu, sitting just 10 to 15 feet above the river level. The placement suggested it had been deliberately discarded, but not well enough to be swept away by the river's current. Everything about the scene felt off. What happened next was chilling. The courtroom watched as footage taken from another investigator's phone plays on the screen. Bulkley slipped on blue medical gloves and with careful hands unzipped the suitcase, revealing a black trash bag tightly packed inside. The way it was arranged sent a chill through him. This wasn't random. He reached down with his right hand and pressed gently against the surface of the bag. Beneath the plastic, he could feel the unmistakable contours of a human form. A head, shoulders, and torso. There was no doubt. He knew they had found Jasmine Pace. Bulkley would notify Investigator Crawford and call the medical examiner and crime scene unit to collect the suitcase and document the scene.
Within the last hour, another Chattanooga police investigator testified about how they recovered Pace's body inside the suitcase. Investigator Steve Bulkley says they obtained warrants for Chen's cell phone locations. He testified that is how he was able to track Chen to Suck Creek Road several times on November 23rd. When investigators went there, they found the suitcase just yards from the Tennessee River.
So, because I had gloves on, I placed my hand on various parts of that trash bag and its contents, and I could feel what was consistent with a human head, shoulders, and a torso. And at that point, we were even more certain that we found Jasmine Pace, but certainly that we had found a body.
Bulkley testified they found the suitcase within minutes of getting out of their vehicles.
After my sequestration, my producer and I traveled back to Chattanooga to see firsthand the places we had heard about during the trial. To say that this was a heavy, sad experience would be an understatement. Standing in these locations where key moments in the case unfolded made everything feel even more real. The weight of it all was undeniable. I'll share more of these clips in upcoming episodes, but for today, I want to take you to Suck Creek Road.
Wow.
We both fell silent as we stepped out of the car onto the gravel crescent-shaped turnout off Suck Creek Road. The turnout itself is small, stretching no more than 30 yards, with the riverbank just steps from the road's edge. I noticed scattered trash in the area, a reminder of how time had passed. It had been over 2 years, and though I was visiting in January of 2025, I imagine the scene didn't look much different in November of 2022. A few bare tulip poplars and a swath of dried kudzu plants line the banks, their tangled remains barely concealing the Tennessee River rushing just 15 feet below. It wasn't until writing for this podcast that I truly understood what kudzu is. I had seen it before, tangled across trees and swallowing entire landscapes, but I never knew just how relentless it was. It's an unstoppable creeping vine that grows up to a foot a day. But here, In the dead of winter, the kudzu is brittle and lifeless. Its once dense greenery reduced to a skeletal tangle of vines. Any illusion of cover was gone. The suitcase had never been well hidden. And standing there that day, it was clear this wasn't a carefully concealed disposal. Jasmine had been found. Next week on Sequestered.
What are we looking at in the center of this photograph now?
This is the bags with the victim's remains in it.
What's the difference between the handcuffs and the shackle?
Well, the handcuff had two locations. So there was one to attach to her hand and one to her ankle. The shackle only had one cinch and then a chain.
CSI uncovers trash bags, shackles, and a chilling truth. Stay with us. Episode 4 dives into the case's most damning details. Thank you for listening to Sequestered, a juror's perspective on the murder trial for Jasmine Pace. Each episode brings us closer to understanding the trial, the people involved, and the weight of seeking justice. If this story speaks to you, please follow, share, and continue the conversation with us. Jasmine's story deserves to be remembered. This is a BP production. The show is written, edited, and produced by me, Sarah Reed, with co-production by Andrea Clyde. News clips featured in this episode were sourced from WTVC News Channel 9, Local 3 News Chattanooga, and the Law and Crime Network. Music and sound design are curated to reflect the gravity and sensitivity of this story, and with the intent to honor Jasmine, her family, and the community affected by her death. For more information or to connect with us, visit sequesteredpod.com or follow us on Instagram at sequesteredpod. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.